Alright, hello everybody, welcome to IACommand. And I thought do something a little different today. I've actually got a bit of a cold, if you can tell, but I'm gonna see if I can do this. So most of you who've watched this channel before know that I mostly cover skirmish. That's just what I've been the most interested in the last few years with Imperial Assault. But I have actually played a ton of campaign, and in this video I'm going to be ranking all of the campaign heroes into tiers. Do a little tier list video. These are really popular on the web, and I thought, this would be fun to do this. I've always wanted to do this with the campaign heroes, but never really had the time to do like a full write-up or anything. But video is pretty easy to do once you set it up. And so let's go ahead and talk about some of these campaign heroes. So just a little background for you. I have played every single campaign in Imperial Assault, including the app campaigns. I've played all the paper campaigns at least once, and many of them multiple times. Most of them I've played as both Empire and Rebel. I've played both with real people in full campaigns for all of them, and I've also done a ton of like solo play. I went to school, I was going to college for a while here, and there was a semester where I had like a 3-hour gap between classes, and I would pretty much just spend that gap, because I had to do all my homework the night before already anyway. I would just spend that gap with grid paper, drawing out the maps from a campaign and just running solo campaigns by myself with paper and pencil and the dice roller app, and that was a ton of fun, and it let me experiment with a ton of different builds for all the campaign heroes, and I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on what each of them can do as far as their potential in a lot of different situations with a lot of different builds. So I'm going to go through the heroes in the order of their release, and then within the core and expansions, I'll just kind of go with how I feel. So we've got them organized there on the bottom, and I'll be putting their hero sheet and a couple of their upgrade cards up into this vassal window that you can see on the left. So let's start off with the core set heroes. So the core 6, in my opinion, pretty much the strongest batch of heroes that's ever been released for the campaign. I don't think any of the expansion heroes have ever really come close to hitting the power level that was set by the core set heroes. They're just all super powerful. They have really good abilities innate on their hero sheet, and then most of them have really powerful upgrades and skill sets that they can turn into combos to create crazy damage dealing potential and action efficiency. But for this tier list, we're going to start off with the Humble Garkon. The Wookiee, he has charge, which lets him, for 2 strain and an action, move up to 4 spaces and then perform an attack, and that's all 1 action, so it's great action economy. He also has rage. Whenever he suffers 3 or more damage from an attack, he gets focus, so that's awesome, self-focusing ability. The problem with Garkon is his abilities are a bit lackluster. He's got a couple good ones. Rampage comes to mind, the 3-point ability or 3 XP ability that whenever he uses charge, it deals 1 damage to each adjacent figure. That's a nice little free damage ability. Sorry while I take a drink there. Keep my voice going. It's going to be a lot of heroes to go through, so I'll try to be quick actually. But yeah, so his abilities kind of drop off later in the campaign compared to other heroes who start to pick up really good abilities and start to get really efficient. So I'm going to put Garkon. He is still really good in the beginning of the campaign, so he's nice to have around. And if you give him some good equipment and weapons, he can sometimes keep up with the other heroes depending on who's in the team. I'm going to give him a B. I'm going to put him in B tier, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. Next up, we have Jinodon. Let's see if I can find her here. There we go. So Jinodon, the smuggler. Jin's awesome. She is a little on the squishy side with only 10 health, but she's very fast. She's got good tech attribute, and she's very fast. She's also got really nice attacking abilities, and she can actually be pretty frustrating for the Empire player to play against if they don't know how to counter her. And if you can figure out how to counter their counters to her quick draw ability, she can be even more frustrating because you're usually activating her on the Emperor player's turn. Is how she usually works when I play her. Her abilities are pretty good. They work well with her quick draw ability. Um, oh yeah, I should probably mention I should mention which abilities are really good and worth taking. Um, Sidewinder is awesome for 4 XP. She's going to be zooming all over the place. It makes it really easy for her to get where she needs to go without ever having to take a move action, which is great. You can also get Cheap Shot. This one's really nice with quick draw. And I've gotten really good at playing Jin in skirmish, and she works pretty much the same in skirmish now in IACP as she does in campaign. Basically, all you have to do is you figure out which figure the Emperor player wants to activate next, and you put Jin next to it. And then they can't block line of sight if you're adjacent to them. So then a great thing you can do is you can replicate what she does in IACP, which is cheap shot, stun somebody, and then sidewinder to safety, which is fantastic. Let's see. Gunslinger is fantastic if you can get some really good pistols for her. And then if you want her to be a support for the team, she also has Smuggler's Luck, which is nice. But I usually focus on her pistol-based abilities. And then if you are really getting frustrated with her getting quick draw getting countered by line of sight blocking, trick shot's an awesome way to do that. You do have to manage her strain, though. Her strain builds up very quickly, so she's not perfect in that way. For Jin, I'm going to go ahead and give her an A. I put her in A tier based on my experiences with her. She is so fast. She gets around the map, which means she can get to where she needs to be. She can deal a lot of damage if you give her the right equipment with the right abilities. She is a bit of a combo hero where you have to combo certain cards together to get them to work, but I find that very rewarding. And she's also, again, very squishy if you don't give her some good armor or other abilities that can increase her health or give her more defenses. So you have to be really careful about her getting attacked too often. All right, moving on to Mac. What was his name again? Here we go. So Mac Eshkare. Covert is an amazingly annoying ability. I'm still amazed that it's in IACP and not causing problems. But yeah, it's so hard to deal with Mac. He is also squishy, just like Jin, but because of Covert, you can just kind of keep him in the back lines and just keep sniping away with him. He's really great at that. He's also got Ambush is a really strong ability. You just get automatic Pierce 2 without having to spin a surge or do anything like that. So really powerful single target DPS character. If you need to kill a big figure like a boss, he's amazing in a boss battle with no escape. This ability is amazing. Lets you become focused and attack again. Also, just 1D training if you need to get the first focus. This is fantastic. And then his mobility is not bad either. If your opponent tries to get in close to attack him, you just use disengage. All of these, or most of these, cost some strain, but he has 5 endurance, and his base ability, ambush, only costs 1 strain to use. So he is very easy to use with strain. If you're playing against the strain deck for the Empire, I think Mac is a good choice. Low strain costs on a lot of his abilities and high endurance. Only weakness is he doesn't bring a lot of crowd control or very controlled damage, pinpoint damage. He's great on objectives though, like because he can get expertise. This is fantastic for opening boxes or interacting with terminals or what have you, or doors. So yeah, Mac's really good. He just does a lot of damage to one target, and usually that's what you want to be doing anyway. So Mac, I used to have Mac at an S tier. I think the only reason I wouldn't do it higher is he is such a self-contained package. He doesn't like play well with others that much, so I'm gonna put him in A tier. He's probably high A though, put like A plus. He can do amazing things. It's just he's a lone wolf. He doesn't really help the team out with any kind of buffs or anything like that, which a lot of S tier characters will be doing. Okay, moving on. Next we have Dialla. Where is Dialla? There she is. Haunted Exile. So the first sort of Jedi character. Dialla is an amazing all-rounder. She starts off as melee, but you can really give her whatever weapon you want. None of her abilities are really dependent on being a melee, I think, except for, unless you want to do Way of the Sarlacc. This ability is, I think, the only one that really requires her to have a melee weapon. I guess her 2 4XPs, weirdly enough, do require her to have a melee weapon, but the rest, really, you can have her running around. I think if you're going to do a support route, you can give her a ranged weapon and she's fine. Most people will play her as melee though, because that's how you start out. But I have had plenty of campaigns where we've given Dialla our best range weapon that nobody needed anymore, and she did great. So Dialla, in the beginning, she's really good with her precise strike. It allows her to get kills and not have to worry about those triple blocks from those annoying stormtroopers that stop them from dying. Later on, when you start encountering white dice figures, you don't have to worry about getting dodged. She's good just kind of as a damage dealer, but she's excellent as a support. She does passive support, so you don't even have to stop dealing damage with her. She just hands out stuff. So like, for example, battle meditation, whenever she rests, she can, if she passes a what do you call it, a insight check, she can have another figure become focused. Interestingly, a lot of her abilities require like an attribute test to be successful, which means she doesn't really want to be hoarding focus on herself. A lot of times you want to just throw those focuses to somebody else, because after you rest, then you're probably going to want to use force throw, and if you did battle meditation on yourself, your force throw is going to be, you're going to waste your focus basically on the force throw. Force throw, also an amazing ability, incredible that it deals damage. The fact that you can push somebody and then probably stun them is really strong with her. Her base weapon also is notable for being able to stun, one of the few heroes that has stun on her base weapon. Yeah, so force throw is awesome. Her weakness is she is very strain intensive. Her foresight costs a strain, precise strike costs 2 strain, force throw, force adept, both of her 4 XPs cost strain, and she doesn't really have any way to recover strain in her kit. So she's very strain intensive unless you can find like a back to pump for her to give her. You definitely want to give it to Dialla if she's in your team. So she's going to be resting a lot, which is again why I highly recommend battle meditation. Force adept, also amazing. It affects the entire team without any range limit. So this is amazing for any mission where the team has to split up and do like attribute tests for objectives. This is going to come in handy. Yeah, and that's that's Dialla. So very, very flexible all-rounder figure, hero. I don't think she excels at anything in particular, which is not great. She also has quite a few duds in her kit. Art of movement, defensive stance, snap kick, like especially snap kick. The other two are okay, but I find that they often whiff or just don't do that much for their cost. So having so many duds in her kit, I put her at the A tier for sure. I love playing Dialla just because of there's so many different roles she can take. She can, if you need a support, she can be your support. You need a melee, she's your melee. If you need a ranged damage dealer, she can pick up a ranged weapon just as good as anyone else. She can reroll with Force Adept with a blaster, so go figure. Anyway, alright, next up is Fen Cygnus. I might have to split this up and do some of these later. This is about as fast as I can go. So Fen, the actual lone wolf with his havoc shot, the blast master. Fen deals an insane amount of damage because of how Imperial Assault deployment rules work in campaign. Whenever the Imperial player has to deploy a group, they have to deploy the entire group to one deployment point. They can't split it up, so they have to put all 3 stormtroopers on that one deployment point. And usually, on most maps, there's usually just one deployment point that's good for deploying to. If they try to do it to another deployment point, they're going to be across the map away from where they need to be. So oftentimes, Imperial players are forced to just... A lot of Imperial players do this tactic where they build up threat, and then on one turn, they do one big deployment with a bunch of figures to try to overwhelm the rebels. It's a really good strategy, and it's completely neutered by Fen. He double attack with 2 Havoc shot for Blast 2, and then usually you get some other AoE damage so that you're doing at least 3 blast damage with 1 activation. He's going to clear out all the little 2-point figures that the Imperial player tries to put in play. Let's see, with Suppressive Fire, I think is a good one. Where they either have to be stunned or take another damage, which will usually kill them. So you can stun a bunch of their figures that have come in. I'm trying to think. Oh, here it is. Rebel Elite. This is the one. This is the one that kills everything because you can Havoc shot with 2 attacks twice. So that's Blast 4 on Fenn's activation. That's going to kill a lot of the cheap figures that Imperial players rely on spamming to overwhelm the rebels. Not only does he have good AoE crowd control, he actually has a really good single target damage as well. With Trench Fighter and Weapon Expert, you can get +2 damage and Pierce 1 on his attack. And then he's also got really good defense, so he's very tanky. Take cover is pretty good. Adds a white die, and I thought he had another one that gave him a block, but I might be thinking of Kotun. And then finally, he has one of the best 1 XP skills in the game, Tactical Movement. This ability is insane. It gives free 2 movement points to either himself or to any friendly rebel within 3 spaces, which is a lot. So he's an amazing hybrid support damage dealer. He's tanky. He's got great strain management. Because even though Havoc Shot costs a strain, most of his abilities cost 1 strain or 0 strain, and then Lone Wolf means he gets to recover a strain at each round as long as you position him correctly. So, yeah, he's really good. I have seen Fen just destroy Imperial players, and I'm going to have to give Fen an S rank. He's going to be our first S. He is a very tough rebel to beat when he is in a team. Alright, finally moving on to our final hero from the core set, the infamous Gideon Argus, both in skirmish and in campaign. So Gideon's pretty unassuming at first when you first look at him. 2 strain to convert his action into an action from another hero doesn't seem like a great deal. But what happens is, and it's not really that great. But what happens is, once he hits 4 XP, he gets this card, Master Stroke. And once he gets this card, he starts generating extra actions from the team. And he doesn't have to take the strain cost from the second one, so he's doing 2 strain and an action to generate 2 actions. And if you can win his side mission, Fearless Leader is also insane. I should mention before I talk about Fearless Leader, his 2 XP card, Mobile Tactician. So you get this after Master Stroke. You always get Master Stroke first, but once you do, you get Mobile Tactician. Because of the way Master Stroke is worded, you're resolving command twice, which means Gideon then gets to have 4 free movement points from his one action. So for one action, you're getting a free move action, and you're getting 2 actions from another hero. The action economy becomes insane. And then, like I mentioned, if you can win his side mission, not only that, you're then recovering strain from the hero you're commanding. And because, again, Master Stroke resolves command twice, you're recovering 2 strain from that figure. It gets crazy. It's it's so insane. And then on top of that, Gideon requires no investment. Like, you might put armor on him and that's it. You don't have to buy him any weapons. You don't have to buy him, you don't have to invest anything in him. He is a force multiplier for whatever your munchkiniest, most kitted out hero is doing. Because he's doubling the benefits you're getting from that super tier 3 weapon or whatever modification you put on that hero. Gideon is amazing. He is an easy S tier for me. And I think a lot of other campaign players would agree that if you know the right build for Gideon, he is an easy S tier. All right, so now we're moving into the expansions. The first expansion that we're going to talk about is Twin Shadows. And Twin Shadows is a bit infamous for its somewhat underdeveloped heroes. But let's talk about, let's see, Sasuka Teft. Sasuka had a really cool design. I think they whiffed a little bit, though, on how it works. First of all, it sucks that you have to discard the token before you attack and get to see the dice. And then the other problem is, usually she wants to give herself a device token, and so she's just kind of powering herself up instead of actually supporting the team. Because she's also going to be the one doing a lot of the attribute tests. You don't really want to be investing in her attacks. Although she does have somewhat of an offensive build with, what's it called? Gadgeteer. And this one actually fixes the problem with Battle Technician since it lets you use it up to twice, so that's nice. And then you can actually modify your weapons, which is really good with a lot of weapons in the game that would otherwise be really strong if they had a mod slot. This unlocks some really interesting tech and gear for her that other heroes cannot use. The other thing she has, so toolkit is really important to make sure that her gadgets, her gadget tokens are helping you solve those attribute tests that are so crucial in campaign missions. And then her energy shield is pretty interesting too. Unfortunately, without Gadgeteer, it's very difficult to generate enough device tokens around to really fuel it. The only time I would say that's not true is if you're running less than 4 heroes and you can get her multiple activations. I guess in a two hero campaign, she's okay. Although with any other hero, you would probably be getting more utility out of your second activation. Overall, I like Sasuka. I think some of her kit is just a little underdeveloped, and her battle technician is a little undercooked for what it does. I think it needed to give out more, like 2 gadget tokens a turn, for it to really start getting going. But you just don't get enough to feed all of her abilities that cost gadget tokens. So for that reason, I'm going to put her in the C tier. All right, let's get to our boy, Bodrick. Here he is. I thought this guy was super cool when I first saw him. When I was looking at the spoilers for Twin Shadows way back in, 2015, as they were posting those spoilers. I was like, oh yeah, that big gun, I want to play as this guy. Oh, and I think the first campaign I ever played, I played a lot of Play by Forum on Board Game Geek. First campaign I ever played, I picked Biv. I had no idea. I mean, I didn't know. I didn't realize. But looking back, yeah. So anyway, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, Biv Bodrick, one of the worst heroes in the game, I think by a wide consensus. Close and Personal gives him an extra attack, but it has to be on the same target he just attacked, and then it has to be on an adjacent target, and he doesn't get to use any of his weapons or equipment or kit to do it, except for a few certain skills that can modify that attack, and it costs 2 strain, and you can only do it once per activation. And then you can also pay a strain to reroll an attack die, which is just not a great use of a strain. Like you could, I'd rather take a movement than reroll. You definitely use it sometimes though. It's not bad to have, but it's not a great secondary ability. His kit is also just not good. His two 4 XP cards are pretty weak. You can pay another 2 strain to basically use close and personal a second time if the target didn't die. So he's such a huge strain user. He just gets so much strain so quickly. And then his other 4 XP is a deplete, so you can only do this once per mission. Otherwise, it'd be pretty cool. Which is weird because it stuns him too. He suffers 2 damage and suffers stun, and then it depletes itself. So I was confused when I saw that. Trophy armor, not great. It's okay. This card is the one you really want to get. Vibro Bayonet. Because this is the only way you can actually modify that attack, and you can. It doesn't matter what weapon you attack with, as long as this is equipped to one weapon he's brought to battle. He can use this, which is nice. So the +1 Pierce 1 and Bleed makes the attack worth it. But it's 3 XP. Like this should have been 2 XP. Let's see. Shake It Off is fine. Advance, this is his like 1 XP movement that a lot of heroes get, but it's when an adjacent figure is defeated and then you have to move into its space. I found this to be so not useful. Like it was so situational. A lot of times it'd be like, I don't want to move into its space because that's taking me away from where I want to go, so it's not flexible. Shake It Off is fine to get rid of harmful conditions, although if you focus, you're going to lose your focus to that. And then there's Into the Fray. This one's hard to trigger a lot of the times, and very easy for the Imperial player to just turn off by moving away before attacking him. So all in all, it's hard to kind of lay out what makes Biv so bad. He's just, all of his abilities are overcosted and underpowered. He is going right in the D tier. All right, moving on to... what is the next one called? Return to Hoth. Or, yeah, I believe that's what it's called. So, Return to Hoth. And we're going to talk about the medic droid, MHD-19. Now, I've never really liked MHD that much. His kit is really interesting. 1 strain, 1 action, and he searches the supply deck for a medical card and claims it. And it's once per activation. I think he's actually gotten better as more medical cards have come out. I think in the beginning he was not that great. I'm looking at the supply here. So in the beginning he had Adrenal Stim, which recovers 3 and becomes focused. That's pretty good. Emergency med pack. So that was the one that was tough. It's because that one is only after you rest. So if you wanted to get somebody with an emergency med pack, you'd have to use his special action and rest. So 2 actions and already be adjacent to the figure you wanted to heal. And then you had back to infusion. And then since then we've had, let's see, Painkillers is actually really good to search out with him. That gives you back +1 speed, +1 endurance. Looking if there's any other medical cards. Oh, Artificial Stimulants was another good one. Although that came out with the Hoth expansion. So that was actually a good one to always search out with your first med action. Yeah, but I think the thing that really got for me was mechanical. Like the fact that he couldn't use them on himself was so frustrating to me. Even I get the flavor. I don't know if it would have been too powerful. And then the self-focusing is really nice. It makes it useful for doing attribute tests with him, as well as sometimes when you need to attack to deal a couple damage. he can do it, but he's not the most reliable even with that. I mean, his sidearm blaster, blue, yellow, green with a surge for Pierce 1, you're not getting a super reliable damage from that. But I think I got to really appreciate. So the other thing I don't like about him is he's pure support, and he has to be close to whoever's being attacked to be able to help them, and then he's not actually advancing you towards solving the objective or completing the mission. He's just stopping you from losing. So that's not great when you're, as the rebels, on a timer to me. But if you get his 4 XP card back to Radiator, if you can keep everybody pretty close, this is actually really good. I love the passive removal of Strain. I think that's really good. I think Skirmish has taught me to really appreciate Miracle Worker. Even though it's a deplete, the fact that it can stop a hero from being wounded and then that hero can activate and double rest to keep the Empire player from winning. You can kind of have MHD and another hero be your like last bastion while the other 2 heroes are trying to solve the mission. But yeah, overall, I'm going to give MHD 19 a B. I think he's fine. I think his kit's interesting. I did enjoy one time playing his combat override build, which makes him go on the offensive. I thought that was a lot of fun. But it wasn't that strong. So I'm going to give him a B, and we're going to move on to Verina. So let me pull up Verina's card here. Sorry if these are a little bit blurry. Hopefully you can kind of read or see what she does or what these heroes are doing. So Verina, cunning operative, she is the close quarters specialist, and she is a lot of fun because whenever somebody dies adjacent to her, she gets to make an attack for 2 strain with their dice pool, and it gets surge for +1. She's a lot of fun. I don't think she's quite as strong as some of the stronger core set heroes. Like, I'd actually put her below Mac and Jin, but I do think she's slightly better than Garkon. The fact that she comes with 2 weapons is also kind of neat, although neither are really that good, so you really want to update her as quickly as possible. She's got some good speed options. Combat momentum is really great. Katara maneuver I've always liked using as a way to, especially for pushing through hostile figures and difficult terrain. And then I like that she's got recover options with Student of Battle is really a good one. But really the one you want to focus on is, let's see, what was it? I think Master Operative was the one I liked, because she is very strain hungry. She does have 5 endurance, which is nice, but she can run out of strain quickly. So to be able to become focused and apply +1 endurance has been really good. Improvised cover is also quite good, except sometimes it's hard to trigger because the Empire player can counter it. But I've come to appreciate +1 block abilities a lot more in campaign. And then Point Blank Shot is a fantastic card. Lets you replace the die with a red die when you're attacking an adjacent figure, which you really want to be doing most of the time, and it's also Pierce 1. It does have to be a pistol, but there's a lot of really cool point blank, like close range pistols in the armory that she can use. And then, oh yeah, Iron Hand is fantastic. If you can get this from her side mission, really, really good to have that passive strain. And then she is notorious. She can just string together these kills because close quarters does not have an actual hard cap limit on how many times you can use it. So if you have ways to recover strain on her, she can do 1, 2, 3 times close quarters, and each time it triggers itself again, which is fantastic. Really fun to set up big chain kills with her, but it can be hard to do sometimes. And if you can't get it started, sometimes it's like, uh-oh, I've got all these figures I thought were going to die. So, and they're still all alive. So I'm going to put Verina at A. I think she sits nicely in the A tier with the rest of them. And moving on to the final hero from Return to Hoth, we've got Loku. So Loku is actually my favorite figure or hero from the Hoth expansion, although I don't think he's the most powerful by a long shot. He is the marksman sniper. He's a hybrid support hero. So set your sights is really good for helping out the rest of the team with giving them a +1 damage from his recon tokens, which I don't see the recon token here, but he does. That's kind of his shtick. Is he has 2 recon tokens he gets to play with, and if he puts them on a hostile figure, they take +1 damage from all attacks until they die. Really love. Let's see, Moncala Special Forces is really good for recovering strain and becoming focused. He does become strained pretty quickly, even with 5 endurance. You want to be using sets your sights every turn, and I believe you can do it at the start and end. So you can actually use set your sights twice per activation, if I'm not mistaken there. I think there was a rules posting somewhere about that. You can go look up. The only problem is that it's limited again to start or end. So he can't like move up, get line of sight on somebody, put a token on them, and then fire, which I really wish he could do. He has to you have to put him somewhere where he has line of sight to a lot of figures, which I guess is very thematic way to play. He's basically he has to find a sniper nest where he can really scout and see everybody, and then he benefits from that. But he's really good for boss battles again, where if you need to kill Vader or Weiss or whatever, you put a recon token on them. That's going to make them go down a lot faster. And his other 4 XP coordinated attack works really well for that. Let's see. His kit is a little anemic. Like I said, Moncala Special Forces was a good one. He's also a bit fragile with only 10 health, so you kind of need to give him armor or keep him far back. But this 5 speed's really nice, and the 5 endurance at least. Oh, Scouting Report is the other one. So if you like to get crates, Scouting Report with Loku, this card is amazing. For just 1 strain, you get to put a recon token on a crate, and then you can interact with it without spending an action. So fantastic for sucking up crates and making lots of credits. Ultimately, though, I think Loku is hurt by his anemic kit that doesn't do a lot. He's also hurt by the fact that all of his abilities really require recon tokens, and he only has 2 of them, and they cost a lot of strain to put out onto the table. So in my experience, Loku is fun, but I am going to have to give him a B. All right, moving right along. After Hoth was Bespin, and we're going to talk about everybody's favorite Hawkbat, Davith Also. So Davith is really fun. 4 speed is a very simple but very fun ability, especially when you combine it with his kit. I think the problem with Davith is his starting hero sheet is quite weak. 4 speed is fine, it's good, but Cloak and Dagger is very wheel spinning. You're not really you're not accomplishing anything with it, because the accuracy bonus from hide is nice, but the main draw from being hidden is getting that extra surge. So if you're spending that extra surge to become hidden and not do anything else, you're not accomplishing much. I don't understand why his skirmish version did it better, because his skirmish card had a surge for +1 in hide, which made a lot more sense. So here there isn't even really a way to capitalize on it. But Davith does start to pick up steam once you start picking up some of his XP cards. First one I recommend usually is Covert Operative, just so you can start hidden. That's one of the problems with Davith, is he doesn't even start hidden like he does in Skirmish. So you actually have to go down a surge just to get the hidden cycle started, which is not worth it. So usually in the beginning you'll never be hidden with Davith, because his starting weapon already has some really good surge abilities that you can already spend your excess surges on. But Covert Operative gets that cycle started in the right way. And then you can sometimes get a free +1 block if doing so would cause you to not take any damage, and then you become hidden again. So that's really nice. Then you can start dealing some really good damage once you get Blindside. So this works nicely with force speed since it lets you move through figures. And then if you're hidden, you get to get +1 damage on the results. So Davith is really good at splitting up damage and dealing small amounts of damage to figures, or you can combine them onto one. Falling Leaf lets him up his damage. This one's okay, but it's usually one of the better ones you can get for him. Of course, Fell Swoop, it lets him work a lot like his campaign version. It works really well with Blindside. And then I've actually found Embody the Force to be quite good with him, because he is squishy. And another big problem with Davith is that if he gets wounded, he loses force speed, which is really his main ability. So that sucks a lot. So you don't want him to get wounded. So if you can get Embody the Force, this is a good one to get, unless you can get a good armor for him. But otherwise, I would go for Fell Swoop. Force Illusion is not good. You don't want that. Elusive Agent's pretty good. He does start to get strained pretty fast because you're using force speed so much. Now, the lightsaber, this one I'm of two minds of. I think if you go for Falling Leaf and Fell Swoop, the lightsaber is worth getting because you become hidden for Fell Swoop, so that's really nice with the lightsaber. But I think if you're going to go with more of an Embody the Force, like Elusive Agent build, then you can skip this and just get something from the armory instead. So overall, I put Davith. The fact that he gets so much weaker when he gets wounded, like, really cripples him. And that he's very not good in the beginning before you start building up some of those awesome XP cards. I'm going to put him in the... I have to put him in the B, unfortunately. Also worth mentioning, if you can get his holocron card, it is really good. A lot of his abilities exhaust, and if you can use them twice, they get very strong. Alright, the second one from the Bespin Gambit expansion is Myrn. So Myrn is all about using false orders to attack with the Imperial figures, and also her figurehead ability is nice. If you... Man, this is really blurry. They did not really do a good job scanning these. I forget what it does. If you suffer one or more damage, choose another hero within spaces that suffer at least one strain. Okay, so she gets attacked. She gets to recover strain off of other heroes. But, so basically, not a good reason not to attack her. So yeah, I've also not liked Myrn. In my experience, the false orders thing is like just as bad in campaign as it is in skirmish, especially because of the threat limit. It has to be less than the threat level, or I guess equal to or less than the threat level, and usually start off at level 2. And it's like, looking at her gun, like, why would you want to attack with a two cost figure like a stormtrooper when you could just do this and kill that stormtrooper? Because really that's what you want to do. You want to be clearing the room of the cheap figures, not really using their attacks that much. She's got some interesting abilities though, I found. So that's where I think most of her strengths come from. So Solidarity is pretty good. It lets her recover 2 strain, and then more importantly, lets her move 2 spaces whenever a hero within 3 spaces moves. So she can really piggyback off of other heroes' actions to get some nice action economy. So that's really good. Lead from the front is probably her best ability. As long as she is activating first, she gets all of these. Her attacks get +1, Pierce 1, and Recover 1. And also her false orders attacks get the same bonus. So that's when it becomes worth using. I know people like Sonic Bellow. I have not liked this card. mostly because again it has that limitation of a figure with cost less than the threat level, I believe. Or no, is that not this one? Oh, you have to pass you have to pass an insight test. So I guess that one's okay. Sometimes you miss though, and that's really frustrating. Let's see. So yeah, she's really good if you have a list. She's got lots of stuff for removing strain. So she's a figurehead, and then rebel propaganda is good for removing strain. So if you have some very strain intensive heroes in your party, you might want to think about picking Myrn. She's also good if you want to play with allies. Reducing the cost of allies is pretty good for 1 XP, and then also her 4 XP lets you get free attacks from another hero and another ally. And this one's also another good one that's worth picking up. Here, this is the one I was thinking of. This is double agent. So you can push the chosen figure 2 spaces before it performs the attack, and then it becomes stunned. So she's an interesting figure, interesting support figure that supports allies and strain, and uses the Emperor's figures against them. Like I said, I've never really liked doing that because normally you don't want to be attacking the Emperor's figures with each other, because then they don't die. They just are each taking equal amounts of damage. But I know Myrn has a lot of fans, but I'm going to give Myrn a C. She's just kind of been in the middle average for me when I've played her. All right, moving on to... All right, Jabba's Realm. So looking at where we're at so far, we've got one expansion hero that has gotten up into the AS area, which is Verina, and the rest have been down in the BC range. So nothing's really come close to the core set heroes, but that's about to change here with Jabba's Realm. So we'll start off with every skirmish player's favorite figure, Onar. So Onar is interesting because he is a tanky support kind of damage dealer. He's definitely a support figure. You can build him as a damage dealer primary, but really his strength lies in his support abilities, and that's because of brute strength. So this one is so powerful because basically whenever you interact, you get to test strength, which is insane. His strength is blue, yellow, yellow. And he gets to do that and interact without spending an action. Oh, and also all of his attributes are now blue, yellow, yellow. So he just becomes this incredible lock picker, door opener, chest opener, problem solver, mission winner that will really win you a lot of missions if you get this card. He does have, and then he also has Keep Up, which is really good, the 1 XP movement. His abilities are not really worth mentioning. His main ones, I mean, Rush is fine. It's funny, there's a lot of missions in Jabba's Realm where if a figure moves onto a certain space, something happens to it. And so Rush is really good in that context. He's also got a very efficient rest. So if he's fully strained, he gets to recover an additional 2, but he can only rest once per activation. So that's kind of interesting. And then not being able to take harmful conditions is probably his strongest ability. Not being able to stun Onar is really strong. Normally that's how you lose a campaign mission, is a bunch of your heroes getting stunned. So the fact that Onar is immune to that is very good. He does lose that strangely when he becomes wounded. So, and he can be not easy to wound, but not difficult. Stormtroopers really like not seeing a defense die there, even though he's got 20 health. So if he gets wounded, he can start taking stun. You have to be aware of that. Some of his things worth mentioning. His armor is pretty good. I don't know if I would spend 4 XP on it. He can be a very good support defensive hero. He's got Stay Behind Me and Get Down. A lot of his abilities require him to take damage, though. But Get Down's quite good. And then for his offensive abilities, he's got Hold Still and Don't Make Me Hurt You and Mutual Destruction. So these are good at increasing his damage, but they also tend to make him take more damage other than hold still. Hold still is actually quite good. The -1 and minus evade is quite interesting. It's like a super pierce, and then oftentimes you'll get focus with this. Although you can't use rush to trigger hold still, you gotta keep that in mind. It has to be a voluntary exit. So I like Onar. Onar, his brute strength ability is just so good and has won so many games. He's just very versatile. I'm gonna put him in the A range. I think you have to know how to build him correctly, though. If you just build him as like a damage dealer, you're gonna be kind of disappointed. But if you take brute strength and then have enough abilities to like keep your other figures alive while you open chests and solve problems, he'll be very good for you. All right, moving on to Shyla. So Shyla Varad. Shyla is very good. So Mandalorian Whip, again, pushing figures onto spaces is really, it's much better than Rush in my opinion, because it gives her a huge reach, where she can reach out and grab somebody who she normally wouldn't be able to attack with her melee attack. And then her starting weapon's really good, because it can do red green instead of red yellow, or green yellow. And then Respite, really good, recovering a strain. Any figure that can recover, just passively recover strain, is really strong in my opinion. And then her abilities. So let's look at her abilities. She's got some really good ones. It's funny, it's been a long time actually since I've looked at some of these cards, but I've played them quite a lot. Responsiveness is just excellent. For some reason you get a movement point or you can recover strain. So again, she's very good if you are facing off against the Imperial Strain deck. Let's see. Proximity Strike is quite good. You can force the defender to reroll, and then she also gets a defensive reroll. Swords Dance is very good. It doesn't look like it would be that good, but if you have the right weapon for it, like a 3-dice weapon, it is very, very powerful. And then definitely her best ability is Deadly Grace. It just makes her a supercharged tank. She gets another +1 endurance. She gets a +1 evade, which makes her very difficult to deal damage to. And then she gets another free 2 movement points. So she becomes very efficient. Full sweep is okay. Like, I've found this to be situational. It does deal a lot of damage, but it can't deal it to the thing you're attacking. I think with Swords Dance it can be good, pretty good, but you still have to deal damage to the thing you're attacking with your second attack, so you got to make sure that you're doing that good. Smoke Bombs and Remote Detector, these cards are bad. You don't need to use these. Just focus on the other ones in her kit and she will do really good by you. She's super flexible, super fast. She's tanky. She's hard to deal damage to. She deals a lot of damage. She just does it all, and she is very, very strong. I'm actually going to put her in the S tier. Even though she, like I mentioned that, like with Dialla, or no, who did I say? Mac. Like Mac doesn't support the rest of the team, so I only gave him an A. Shyla doesn't really do that either, but she's so much stronger than Mac as far as just being this like one-person army. Mac can crumple if he takes a few attacks. Shyla does not have that problem, and Shyla can also just go wherever she wants instead of having to hang back and hide in the shadows, and she gets there very quickly. She's super efficient, and I feel good giving her an S grade. All right, next one is Vinto. So Vinto is actually my favorite hero from Jabba's realm. He is the pinger. He pings. If you've got an Imperial figure that lived with 1 health, he will help you out. He's gonna ping that thing to death. Bolt Slinger is awesome. He's actually really good when you like attack one figure and then it doesn't quite die, so you attack another figure, and then that one had 1 damage already from Bolt Slinger, so the next one will take 1 damage. it's very fun kind of distributing these damage tokens in that way. And Thread the Needle is also quite nice when your Imperial player is like body blocking hallways and keeping his damaged ones in the back. You can pick them off using Thread the Needle. That being said, all of his abilities are very like focused on attributes. I like Shot on the Run is a really good one if you need to move. I think Battlefield Experience is usually one I go for early. Sharpshooter's worth it, so you can get some extra range on these things. I think Dead On is also really good, just exhausting it for +1 damage on any of your abilities. Let's see. And then Rapid Fire is fantastic, as well as Merciless. I think both of these abilities are worth taking. If you need more crowd control, Rapid Fire is great. If you are lacking in a single target damage dealer, like something that's good at bringing down a high health figure, Merciless is fantastic. It's basically Assassinate from the skirmish game. Yeah, I love Vinto. The only problem I have with Vinto is he doesn't have anything in his kit for giving him extra movement. Also, Offhand Blaster is pretty good. If you are going to do a pinpoint shot build, I don't quite like pinpoint shot. I think Vinto can do better than that, but if that's what you need. Yeah, so what I was saying was Vinto doesn't really have anything in his kit that gives him extra movement. Shot on the Run is the closest thing, but you don't really want... The whole point of having movement abilities is so you don't have to spend an action on a move, but this one does, and it rewards you with 1 damage sometimes if you're lucky. So that's the problem I have with Vinto. Pretty much always just strain to move, strain to move, strain to move, rest, strain to move, strain to move, strain to move, rest, all the time. But once you get into the cadence of that, he just kind of slowly walks forward and annihilates waves of enemies, and he's a ton of fun to play. Putting Vinto in the A tier for that, I think he's fantastic. And that finishes up Jabba's Realm. So moving on to Heart of the Empire. We're getting close here, guys. Whew. And we're going to talk about Drakata, everybody's favorite demolitions expert. Drakata is really awesome. She can actually use Demolish, I believe. Let's see. I think they errated Demolish, so you can only use it during her activation, though. Because I think otherwise you could just keep using it during like other activations, which is pretty broken. Dispersal Shot is awesome. I think did we use that on the heavy troopers? I don't remember. Something like that. But making sure you always can get your blast. I would say Drakata is an easy second to Fen in terms of just how good she is at doing blast. But unlike Fen, she can also use her shrapnel rounds to reach out and kind of arc damage from one figure to another figure that's within 2 spaces. Shrapnel rounds is great. I think her repeater cannon is excellent. It's one of the few XP weapons that I always pick up because it's just good. It's like blue-green +1. That's pretty close to being like 3 dice. And it has excellent abilities. And it has blast, and then it has 2 mod slots, which is great. Shrapnel rounds is also definitely worth picking up. She has a great support movement ability and leave no one behind for 1 XP. Let's see. Charging up I have found to be quite good. A problem I've had with her is she sometimes under-rolls on her attacks, especially when you're using the starting weapon. So charging up is nice because basically with her dispersal shot here, that lets her do -1 damage and +1 surge, that damage surge is going to be, or that damage power token is often going to be like an extra surge for you that you can convert into extra surge so you can get the blast. And that's what you're doing with Drakata. You're clearing out rooms. You're doing that thing where, again, when the Imperial player has to deploy a bunch of figures adjacent to each other, Drakata is going to kill a bunch of them all at once, and she's fantastic at doing that. Wookiee Wrath I would stay away from. It just doesn't fit into what she's really trying to accomplish with a lot of the other things in her kit that give her blast or affect how blast works. Thermal Explosives is excellent. Does extra damage with Demolish. And I should mention Demolish basically places rubble token and then deals damage to everything it places a rubble token on. So a lot of the times, even early in the campaign, if you can get attack blast 1, then you demolish and finish off a bunch of the 3 health figures all at once. This lets you add die to your attack, and then also powers up demolish, which is great. Structural exploitation is good, even if you're not attacking an object. So the only thing that keeps her from being as good as Fen, in my opinion, is she doesn't have access to tactical maneuver, which is just, or tactical movement, excuse me, which is just the best card in the game, honestly. So that's a big part of what makes Fen so good. But also her blast is not guaranteed. With Fen's Havoc Shot, that blast is guaranteed, and it stacks with other instances of blast. With Drakata, you get a blast guaranteed with shrapnel rounds, but you got to pay for that, and it's taking up one of your mod slots. So it's not quite as good as Fen, but she is still quite good. I'm going to give her an A. Definitely think she's better than most of these B tier figures. Alright, moving on to Jared and Jax. So Jared's a lot of fun. He brings his companion Jax with him to the missions. Jared is actually a defensive powerhouse, which you would not think looking at his 10 health. But parry is pretty nuts. Basically giving you +1 block twice in a game as long as you have a second weapon with him. You can't get rid of his vibro claws, but you don't have to bring them with you. So usually you'll pick up a second weapon. I don't think the claws are that great. And he has another defensive ability that I usually end up taking. Where is it? There's something that gives him +1 block. And now I can't. Oh, here it is. Mutual progression. You just gain 1 block, and I think it's supposed to be +1 block. But this on top of parry, he is very hard to deal damage to, in my experience. The other thing that makes him really good is forward momentum is a fantastic 1-point movement ability. Since you get a free movement point after you use parry, and you can use parry up to twice in a round. So that's free. You don't have to exhaust it for that. And then you still get the 1 movement on top of that. So you can get up to 3 movement from this, which is really good. Mechanical Master is really good. Helps fix that low health, and makes Jax a lot more worth it since he'll become focused when he attacks. And you get to activate Jax twice in a round, which is really good. Leaping Slash is fine. Vibro Claws are really underwhelming, but you can sometimes get a damage power token with the free attack. Slicer's Upgrades is very underrated. This has been a really strong card for me, especially in Raid. Because in Raid, the whole point is you're trying to scoop up as many of those objectives as you can during this Raid mission. And so Slicer's Upgrades lets Jax pull double duty on doing that. And in a lot of missions where you need to interact with something, this is going to be really good. So Slicer's Upgrades, do not sleep on this card because it's really good with Jax. Especially with, his forward momentum. Lets him move before he does that. So yeah, he's also very strain light, which I like. He doesn't take a lot of strain. Hardly any of his abilities use strain. Leaping, this is actually the only one that does. And he only needs strain once when he deploys Jax. Yeah, Jared has been surprisingly good for me. He's very versatile. He can do objectives or he can do damage dealing. He's very defensive and tanky and very hard to kill. So I give him an A. Alright, so moving on to the final hero in Heart of the Empire. We've got Khotun Ferralo, Rebel Quartermaster. So Khotun is another very all-rounded support character. She is kind of like the, I don't know, the Dialla of support. She can kind of just do anything, but she does some really interesting things that I think make her stand out. So, first of all, she's very focused on power tokens. A lot of her abilities are based in power tokens. But the thing that I actually really like about her is her stockpile ability. So, whenever she or another friendly figure within 3 spaces interacts with a crate, and that's not just like opening the crate. Like if something, like I think there's a companion that can interact with crates to draw cards. I think that works too. Um, Whenever you interact with the crate, instead of drawing the card, and I believe they errated that, you get to choose one of the card. You get to look at 5. You look at the top 5 cards, and you choose one and keep it. And I find this to be fantastic because the problem with opening crates is you so often get these cards that are just duds that you're like, oh, why did I waste an action and probably some movement points coming over here to open this, and all I got was this, whatever, lucky dice or something, or this coin. I mean, usually valuable goods is good, and you can't keep that, unfortunately, with stockpile, but, like, you get to keep whatever the best thing is, really. And so I find that ability to be fantastic. I am a player who really likes going for crates, if you can't tell. I think they're fun, and I like collecting them during the missions. So I love anything that rewards you or enables you to get more crates. But her damage tokens are awesome too. She gives herself one and a friendly figure one, so her attacks are often quite good. Even though her service rifle is designed without a good surge ability because she is going to be already doing +1 damage, and the designers knew that. But it also gets a reroll, which is great. But she's fine taking another weapon. Like I think she's good either way. And then all of her abilities are awesome support abilities that also make her good on her own. So like inch by inch, this is as close to tactical movement as you can get from Fen. You each get 1 movement point. That's fantastic. Let's see. Combat logistics is great. Like all of her abilities are equally good. I don't think I see a bad one in here. I think the only one that I really would say is bad. Yeah, I don't know. But dig in is fantastic. +2 block is a lot, I have found, and she can really save somebody from dying with this ability. Let's see. Opportunist is fantastic. First of all, it's a big stat increase, so it's basically like a combat coat. And then if somebody attacks with a power token that she gives them, she gets to move 1 space. And I found this card to be an amazing way for Kotun to kind of sneak in extra movement, like every single hero activation, especially once you start getting her later cards. Oh, here. So her 4 XP's, her squad cohesion, this card is incredible. So basically you get to start the mission with 6 power tokens if you count the 2 you get from arms distribution and then the 4 from this one. And then the ability to spend tokens on from one hero to another, like say you got one hero that has a block token and then they attack your other hero and you're like, well, I get to spend this block token from this hero. And it's like your opponent, your Imperial player can't really do anything about it, and it makes your power tokens super efficient. And you can spend them as anything again, like, oh man, I've got this block token, but we're not getting attacked right now. The strike team on the other side of the map is getting attacked. Well, I get to turn this into a damage token, or vice versa. Although they have to be close to Kojin to do that, but it's still very good. I think self-sufficient's the one that, like, I think a lot of people like this one. It looks really good, being able to double up your tokens, but only Kotun can use that ability. Like, it doesn't affect other heroes. And then 1 strain for 1 power token is not very efficient. I do find she fills up on strain, using strain for movement and then arms distribution, and then dig in. Usually I use that every round, but yeah. So Kotun, I have found Kotun to be just play really well. She just like fills in all the gaps in your team. She makes everybody run at peak efficiency if you use her correctly and if you put her in the right place. This may be biased because I have played a lot with her in solo games, so where I'm controlling all of the rebels. So in those cases, it's maybe easier for me to make sure that the heroes are coordinated and placed in ways that Kotun can benefit them the most. But I think if you can do that, if you can work as a team as the rebels, or if you're playing solo, Kotun is a fantastic hero in my experience, and I've really enjoyed playing with her. Um, and honestly, I don't feel bad at all putting her in S tier. Like I think just she has no weaknesses. All of her abilities are great. She attacks well. She enables everybody else to attack well. She moves well. She's got great attribute tests. She really can do it all, and I think she's that kind of figure where it's like she does everything so well that like she has no weakness. So yeah, Kotun at S tier. Okay, finally, last expansion. 21 heroes I think we've got in this game. Had to talk about. We've got Tress Haknoa, the Brawler. I like Tress. I think I played her in the last ever in-person campaign I played. She's very fast. Leg hydraulics is a lot of fun. It kind of gives her a random amount of movement, but usually you get 1 to 2. Sometimes 3, very rarely 0. I've very rarely had it crap out on me. So she's fast. She's got a lot of fun, interesting XP abilities. Her style tokens are interesting. It's kind of weird that you get it after you attack. So you like reload, and then you with her arm, you can spend them to add +1 damage to the attack results, as long as you're using a melee weapon. So she's very melee focused. She doesn't pick up any ranged weapons or anything. It's an interesting resource management mechanic that usually I was just using for +1 damage. But she's got some interesting ways to use it. I shouldn't say that though, because like this card I remember I actually used quite a lot and was quite effective for getting movement points. I never used Minox Strike as much. I was hopeful that this would be better, but often it wasn't that great. Let's see. Oh, this card is awesome with her. Being able to do, again, +2 block is a lot. And she can actually do it multiple times in a round. Unfortunately, she can only get the blocks against ranged attacks. So she's a little more vulnerable to melee attacks in this case, which is also interesting in my opinion. And then Dragon Snake is very good to help her get more power tokens. So whenever she kills something, she gets an extra token. This card I didn't get. It looked weird. A lot of the abilities don't work with this, I remember. Like, you may choose an additional effect as though you had spent 2 style tokens. I feel like from that it was like you couldn't actually double up on something. You had to use a different ability. So that was weird. But I think I got Fluidity, and this card was pretty great. You can just spend 2 tokens for a free action that's not a attack, which was awesome. So yeah, she's fun. She's got limitations though. You can stall out if you don't manage your style tokens well. Your abilities don't do anything. So in that way, she's kind of awkward, and sometimes she has a hard time getting style tokens. Although again, Eric's variation and Dragon Snake variation do help with that. So she's very build dependent. I think you can build a very bad build with her, which is not fun. But I think I would give her a B based on my experience with her. She doesn't contribute a lot. She's just kind of your average run-of-the-mill, moves around, deals damage, kills figures in an interesting way, but she doesn't do it like especially efficiently like a lot of these A heroes that can kill more than their fair share, or that can accomplish more objectives than their fair share for one hero. She's just kind of that like one hero goodness. And then finally, we have CT-1701. CT is very, very good. Barrage is awesome, just like it is in skirmish. Especially because you can upgrade his weapon in campaign in a way that you can't in skirmish. His weapon's kind of middling in skirmish, but in campaign you can just go ahead and get him whatever awesome weapon you want, and then he can attack. And there's actually a lot of weapons in campaign that cancel out dodges. So if you give him one of those, it's really great with barrage. And then his abilities are also super good. One of the abilities that is really good on him is squad tactics. And if you run this with his other ability, strafing run, he can like basically activate another hero on his activation for you, and then that hero gets to activate. It's like you get free movement as long as you're managing his movement points correctly. He's able to generate a lot of movement points and then use them on other people. So and also you're getting a +2 health, +1 speed. So this is giving you extra movement points, and then this one's also giving you extra movement points. But really, the real kicker with CT that I don't think anybody really play tested correctly is this card, Pin Them Down. You just stun. You stun and weaken 2 figures for free. This card is insane. I've played against it as Empire, and I've played against it as Rebel, or played with it as Rebel, and it just completely hoses Empire players' figures sometimes, where especially if they're melee, like the Empire player basically can't bring melee figures to the mission anymore. If they bring melee figures to a mission and then they get stunned by this, it's like, okay, they unstun and they move and they did nothing. So this card is insane. The fact that it can basically stop a whole class of figures on its own is crazy to me. Yeah, I don't have much else to say to that. He is another figure that like can generate 3 to 4 actions worth of utility during his activation, very similar to Gideon. And then on top of that, with Pin Them Down, he's taking away 2 actions from the Empire player. You often get like 5 or 6 actions worth of stuff out of one activation, which puts him right square in S tier. And I feel very good about that. So there we go. There's all your campaign heroes ranked according to my tier system. Basically how I feel about them. I feel good about it looking at this list. I think we did a good job with the S's and the A's. I think the B's are reasonable, and I think maybe Mern might be controversial to some people. Maybe MHD might be controversial to some people. Love to hear in the comments what you guys think of my tier list. Maybe you can submit your own and tell me what you think, and I look forward to seeing how we do with this video and see what campaign videos do for the channel.